Time for dinner. We're on Ezekiel 20. And it came to be in the 7th year, in the 5th month, on the 10th of the new moon, that certain of the elders of Israel came to inquire of Jehovah, and sat before me. And the word of Jehovah came to me, saying, Son of man, speak to the elders of Israel, and say to them, Thus said the Master Jehovah, Have you come to inquire of me? As I live, I am not being inquired of by you, declares the Master Jehovah. Judge them, Son of man, judge them. Make known to them the abominations of their fathers. And you shall say to them, Thus said the Master Jehovah, On the day when I chose Israel and lifted my hand in an oath to the seed of the house of Yaakov, and made myself known to them in the land of Mizraim, I lifted my hand in an oath to them, saying, I am Jehovah your Elohim. On that day I lifted my hand in an oath to them, to bring them out of the land of Mizraim, into a land that I had searched out for them, flowing with milk and honey, the splendor of all lands. And I said to them, Each one of you throw away the abominations which are before his eyes, and do not defile yourselves with the idols of Mizraim. I am Jehovah your Elohim. But they rebelled against me, and would not obey me. All of them did not throw away the abominations which were before their eyes, nor did they forsake the idols of Mizraim. So I resolved to pour out my wrath on them, to complete my displeasure against them in the midst of the land of Mizraim. But I acted for my name's sake, that it should not be profaned before the eyes of the nations among whom they were, before whose eyes I had made myself known to them, to bring them out of the land of Mizraim. So I took them out of the land of Mizraim, and I brought them into the wilderness. And I gave them my laws, and showed them my right rulings, which, if a man does, he shall live by them. And I also gave them my Sabbaths, to be a sign between them and me, to know that I am Jehovah, who sets them apart. But the house of Israel rebelled against me in the wilderness. They did not walk in my laws, and they rejected my right rulings, which, if a man does, he shall live by them. And they greatly profaned my Sabbaths. Then I said I would pour out my wrath on them in the wilderness to consume them. But I acted for my name's sake, not to profane it before the nations, before whose eyes I had brought them out. And I myself also lifted my hand in an oath to them in the wilderness, not to bring them into the land which I had given them, flowing with milk and honey, the splendor of all lands. Because they rejected my right rulings and did not walk in my laws, and they profaned my Sabbaths, for their heart went after their idols. And my eye pardoned them from destroying them, and I did not make an end of them in the wilderness. And I said to their children in the wilderness, Do not walk in the laws of your fathers, nor observe their rulings, nor defile yourselves with their idols. I am Jehovah your Elohim. Walk in my laws, and guard my right rulings, and do them, and set apart my Sabbaths. And they shall be a sign between me and you, to know that I am Jehovah your Elohim. But the children rebelled against me. They did not walk in my laws and my right rulings. They did not guard to do them, which if a man does, he shall live by them. They profaned my Sabbaths. So I resolved to pour out my wrath on them, to complete my displeasure against them in the wilderness. But I held back my hand and acted for my name's sake, not to profane it before the eyes of the nations, before whose eyes had I had brought them out. Also I myself lifted my hand in an oath to those in the wilderness, to scatter them among the nations and disperse them throughout the lands. Because they had not done my right rulings, and they rejected my laws, and they profaned my Sabbaths, and their eyes were on their fathers' idols. And I also gave them up to the laws that were not good, and right rulings by which they would not live. And I defiled them by their own gifts, as they passed all their firstborn through the fire, so that I might stun them, so that they know that I am Jehovah. Therefore, Son of man, speak to the house of Israel, and you shall say to them, Thus said the Master Jehovah, In this your fathers have further reviled me by committing trespass against me. When I brought them into the land for which I had lifted my hand in an oath to give them, and they saw all the high hills and all the thick trees, they slaughtered their slaughterings there and provoked me with their offering there. And they sent up their sweet fragrance there and poured out their drink offering there. And I said to them, What is this high place to which you go, so that its name is called High Place to this day? Therefore say to the house of Israel, Thus said the Master Jehovah, Are you defiling yourselves in the way of your fathers? And do you whore after their abominations? For when you lift up your gifts and make your sons pass through the fire, you defile yourselves with all your idols, even to this day. And shall I be inquired of by you, O house of Israel? As I live, declares the Master Jehovah, I am not being inquired of by you. And what comes up in your spirit shall never be, when you say, Let us be like the nations, like the tribes in other lands, serving wood and stone. As I live, declares the Master Jehovah, do not I, with a mighty hand, with an outstretched arm, and with wrath poured out, reign over you? And I shall bring you out from peoples, and gather you out of the lands where you are scattered, with a mighty hand, and with an outstretched arm, and with wrath poured out. And I shall bring you into the wilderness of the peoples, and shall enter into judgment with you face to face there. As I entered into judgment with your fathers in the wilderness of the land of Mizraim, so I shall enter into judgment with you, declares the Master Jehovah. And I shall make you pass under the rod, and shall bring you into the bond of the covenant, and purge the rebels from among you, and those who transgress against me. From the land where they sojourn I bring them out, but they shall not come into the land of Israel, and you shall know that I am Jehovah. As for you, O house of Israel, thus said the Master Jehovah, Go serve each of you his idols, and afterwards, if you are not listening to me, but do not profane my set-apart name any more with your gifts and your idols. For on my set-apart mountain, on the mountain height of Israel, declares the Master Jehovah, there all the house of Israel, all of them in the land, shall serve me. There I shall accept them, and there I shall require your offerings, and the first fruits of your offerings, together with all your set-apart gifts. As a sweet fragrance I shall accept you when I bring you out from the peoples, and I shall gather you out of the lands where you have been scattered, and I shall be set apart in you before the nations. And you shall know that I am Jehovah, when I bring you into the land of Israel, into the land for which I lifted my hand in an oath to give to your fathers. And there you shall remember your ways, and all your deeds with which you were defiled. And you shall loathe yourselves in your own sight because of all the evils that you did. And you shall know that I am Jehovah, when I have dealt with you for my name's sake, not according to your evil ways. nor according to your corrupt deeds, O house of Israel, declares the Master Jehovah. And the word of Jehovah came to me, saying, Son of man, set your face toward the south, and drop word against the south, and prophesy against the forest land, the south. And you shall say to the forest of the south, Hear the word of Jehovah. Thus said the Master Jehovah, See, I am kindling a fire in you, and it shall devour every green tree and every dry tree in you. The blazing flame is not quenched, and it shall burn all faces from the south to the north, and all flesh shall see that I, Jehovah, have kindled it. It is not quenched. And I said, Ah, Master Jehovah, they are saying of me, Is he not speaking parables? And the word of Jehovah came to me, saying, Son of man, set your face toward Jerusalem, and drop word against the set-apart places, and prophesy against the land of Israel. And you shall say to the land of Israel, Thus said Jehovah, See, I am against you, and I shall draw my sword out of its sheath, and cut off from you the righteous and the wrong. Because I shall cut off from you the righteous and the wrong, therefore my sword shall go out of its sheath against all flesh, from south to north. And all flesh shall know that I, Jehovah, have drawn my sword out of its sheath, not to turn back again. And you, son of man, sigh with a breaking of loins, and sigh with bitterness before their eyes. And it shall be when they say to you, Why are you sighing? That you shall say, Because of the report that is coming. And every heart shall melt, and all hands shall go limp, and every spirit become faint, and all knees be weak as water. See, it is coming, and it shall be, declares the Master Jehovah. And the word of Jehovah came to me, saying, Son of man, prophesy, and you shall say, Thus said Jehovah, say a word, a sword is sharpened and also polished. It is sharpened to make a slaughter, it is polished to flash like lightning. Or shall we rejoice? My son, you have despised the rod, every stick. And he has given it to be polished, to be taken by the hand. This sword is sharpened and polished, to be given into the hand of the killer. Cry and wail, son of man, for it shall be on my people, on all the leaders of Israel. They shall be delivered to the sword together with my people, therefore strike your thigh. For it is a trier, and what, if it even despises the rod? Shall it not be, declares the Master Jehovah? And you, son of man, prophesy and strike your hand striking, and let the sword come down twice, thrice, the sword for the slain. It is the sword of the slain, the great one, which surrounds them. And I have set the point of the sword against all their gates, to melt the heart, and that the overthrown be many. Ah, it is made like lightning, keen for slaughter. Sharpen yourself on the right, set yourself on the left, wherever your edge is appointed. And I too, I shall strike my hands together, and cause my wrath to rest. I, Jehovah, have spoken. And the word of Jehovah came to me again, saying, And you, son of man, appoint for yourself 2 ways for the sword of the sovereign of Babel to go, both of them coming from one land, and place a signpost, put it at the head of the way to the city. Appoint a way for the sword to go to Rabbah of the Ammonites, and to Yehuda into the walled Jerusalem. For the sovereign of Babel shall stand at the parting of the way, at the fork of the 2 ways, to practice divination. he shall shake the arrows. He shall ask the house, hold idols, and he shall look at the liver. In his right hand shall be divinations for Yerushalayim, to set up battering rams, to call for murder, to lift the voice with shouting, to set battering rams against the gates, to keep up a siege mound, to build a wall. And it shall be to them as a false divination in the eyes of those who have sworn oaths to them. But he is bringing their crookedness to remembrance, so that they are taken. Therefore thus said the Master Jehovah, because you have made your crookedness to be remembered, in that your transgressions are uncovered, so that your sins are seen in all your deeds, because you have been remembered, you are taken by hand. And to you, O profane, wrong one, leader of Israel, whose day has come in the time of the crookedness of the end. Thus said the Master Jehovah, remove the turban and take off the crown. This shall not remain. Exalt the humble, and humble the exalted. Overthrown, overthrown, I make it overthrown. It shall be no longer until he comes to whom it rightly belongs, and I shall give it. And you, son of man, prophesy and say, thus said the Master Jehovah concerning the Ammonites, and concerning their reproach. And you shall say, a sword, drawn for slaughter, polished to the utmost, like lightning. Will they see false visions for you? Will they divine a lie to you? To put you on the necks of the profaned ones, the wrong ones whose day has come, in the time of the crookedness of the end. Return it to its sheath, in the place where you were created, in the land of your origin, I shall judge you. And I shall pour out my displeasure on you, blow against you with the fire of my wrath, and shall give you into the hands of the beastly men, skilled to destroy. You are to be fuel for the fire, your blood to be in the midst of the land. You are not to be remembered, for I, Jehovah, have spoken. And the word of Jehovah came to me, saying, and now, son of man, judge the city of blood, and you shall show her all her abominations, and you shall say, thus said the Master Jehovah, the city sheds blood in her midst, that her time might come, and she has made idols within herself to become defiled. And you have become guilty by the blood which you have shed, and have defiled yourself with the idols which you have made. Thus you have brought your days near, and have come to the end of your years. Therefore I shall make you a reproach to the nations, and a mockery of all the lands. Those near and those far from you mock you. Defiled is your name, and great the confusion. See the leaders of Israel? Each one has used his arm to shed blood in you. They have despised father and mother within you. They have oppressed the stranger in your midst. They have wronged the fatherless and the widow within you. You have despised that which is set apart to me, and you have profaned my Sabbaths. Slanderous men have been in you to shed blood, and in you are those who eat on the mountains. They have done wickedness in your midst. In you they have uncovered the nakedness of a father. In you they have humbled women who are defiled during their uncleanness. And the one has done abomination with his neighbor's wife, and another has wickedly defiled his daughter-in-law, and another within you has humbled his sister, his father's daughter. In you they have taken a bribe to shed blood. You have taken interest and increase. You have cut off your neighbor by extortion, and you have forgotten me, declares the Master Jehovah. And see, I shall strike my hand because of your greedy gain, which you have made, and at the bloodshed which has been in your midst. Would your heart stand, your hands be strong in the days when I deal with you? I, Jehovah, have spoken and shall do it. And I shall scatter you among the nations, and shall disperse you throughout the lands, and shall consume your filthiness out of you. And you shall profane yourself before the eyes of the nations, and you shall know that I am Jehovah. The word of Jehovah came to me, saying, Son of man, the house of Israel has become dross to me. All of them are bronze and tin and iron and lead in the midst of a furnace. They have become the dross of silver. Therefore thus said the Master Jehovah, because all of you have become dross, therefore see, I am gathering you into the midst of Jerusalem. As they gather silver and bronze and iron and lead and tin into the midst of a furnace, to blow fire on it, to melt it, so I gather you in my displeasure and in my wrath, and I shall blow and melt you. And I shall gather you and blow on you with the fire of my wrath, and you shall be melted in its midst. As silver is melted in the midst of a furnace, so are you melted in the midst, and you shall know that I, Jehovah, have poured out my wrath on you. And the word of Jehovah came to me, saying, Son of man, say to her, You are a land that is not cleansed or rained upon in the day of displeasure. There is a conspiracy of her prophets in her midst, like a roaring lion tearing the prey. They have devoured life, they have taken wealth and precious matters. They have made many widows in her midst. Her priests have done violence to my teachings, and they profane my set-apart matters. They have not distinguished between the set-apart and profane, nor have they made known the difference between the unclean and the clean. And they have hidden their eyes from my Sabbaths, and I am profaned in their midst. Her leaders in her midst are like wolves tearing the prey, to shed blood, to destroy lives, and to get greedy gain. And her prophets have coated them with whitewash, seeing a false vision and divining a lie for them, saying, Thus said the Master Jehovah, when Jehovah had not spoken. The people of the land have practiced oppression and committed robbery, and have wronged the poor and needy, and they oppress the stranger without right ruling. And I sought for a man among them who would make a wall and stand in the breach before me on behalf of the land, that I should not destroy it, but I did not find one. Therefore I have poured out my displeasure on them. I have consumed them with the fire of my wrath, and I have put their way on their own head, declares the Master Jehovah. And the word of Jehovah came to me, saying, Son of man, there were 2 women, daughters of one mother, and they whored in Mizraim. They whored in their youth. There their breasts were handled, and there their maiden nipples were squeezed. And their names were Oholah, the elder, and Oholibah, her sister. And they were mine, and they bore sons and daughters. And their names, Shomron is Oholah, and Yerushalayim is Oholibah. And Aholah whored while she was mine, and she lusted for her lovers, the neighboring Ashurians, dressed in purple, officers and rulers, all of them desirable young men, horsemen riding on horses. So she gave her whoring on them, all of them choice sons of Ashur, and with all for whom she lusted, with all their idols she defiled herself. And she did not forsake her whorings from Mizraim, for in her youth they had lain with her, and they squeezed her maiden nipples and poured out their whorings on her. Therefore I have given her into the hand of her lovers, into the hand of the Ashurians, for whom she lusted. They uncovered her nakedness, they took away her sons and daughters, and killed her with the sword. And she became a byword among the women, and they executed judgments on her. And her sister Aholibah saw this, yet she became more corrupt in her lust than she, and in her whorings more corrupt than her sister's whorings. She lusted for the sons of Ashur, officers and rulers, the ones near, perfectly dressed, horsemen riding on horses, all of them desirable young men. And I saw that she was defiled. They both took the same way. But she increased her whorings, and she looked at men carved on the wall, images of costume inscribed in red, girded with belts around their loins, flowing turbans on their heads, all of them looking like officers, like the sons of Babel of costume, the land of their birth. As soon as her eyes saw them, she lusted for them, and sent messengers to them in costume. And the sons of Babel came to her into the bed of carnal love, and they defiled her with their whorings, and she was defiled by them, and her being turned from them in disgust. And she uncovered her whorings, and uncovered her nakedness. Then I turned my being from her in disgust, as my being had turned from her sister in disgust. And she increased her whorings, remembering the days of her youth, when she whored in the land of Mizraim. And she lusted after her lovers, whose flesh is like the flesh of donkeys, and whose emission is like the emission of horses. Thus you longed for the wickedness of your youth, when the Mithrites squeezed your nipples because the breasts of your youth. Therefore, Aholibah, thus said the Master Jehovah, see, I am stirring up your lovers against you, from whom your being turned in disgust, and shall bring them against you from every side. The children of Babel and all the costume, Pekod and Shovah and Kovah, all the sons of Ashur with them, all of them desirable young men, governors and rulers, officers and men of name, all of them riding on horses. And they shall come against you with battle axe, chariots and vehicles, and with an assembly of peoples. They shall set against you armor and shield and helmet all around, and I shall commit the judgment on them, and they shall judge you according to their rulings. And I shall set my jealousy against you, and they shall deal heatedly with you. They shall cut off your nose and your ears, while the rest of you fall by the sword. Your sons and your daughters they shall take away, while the rest of you shall be consumed by fire. And they shall strip you of your garments, and take your pretty jewels. And I shall put an end to your wickedness, and to your whoring from the land of Mizraim, so that you do not lift your eyes to them, neither remember Mizraim any more. For thus said the Master Jehovah, see, I am giving you into the hand of those whom you hate, into the hand of those from whom your being turned in disgust. And they shall deal with you in hatred, and they shall take away all you have worked for, and they shall leave you naked and bare, and the nakedness of your whoring shall be uncovered, and the wickedness of your whorings. I do this to you because of your whoring after the nations, because you have been defiled by their idols. You have walked in the way of your sister, and I shall give her cup into your hand. Thus said the Master Jehovah, drink of your sister's cup, the deep and wide one, you being laughed at and mocked at, for it holds much. Be filled with drunkenness and sorrow, the cup of astonishment and ruin, the cup of your sister Shomeron. And you shall drink it, and shall drain it, and gnaw its shards, and tear at your own breasts, for I have spoken, declares the Master Jehovah. Therefore, thus said the Master Jehovah, because you have forgotten me and cast me behind your back, therefore you shall bear your wickedness and your whorings. And Jehovah said to me, Son of man, judge Oholah and Oholibah, and declare to them their abominations. For they have committed adultery, and blood is on their hands. And they have committed adultery with their idols, and to even offered their sons, whom they bore to me, passing them through the fire to devour. They also did this to me. They have defiled my set-apart place in the same day, and they have profaned my Sabbaths. For when they had slain their children for their idols, on the same day they came into my set-apart place to profane it. And see, that is what they did in the midst of my house. And they even sent for me to come from afar, to whom a messenger was sent. And see, they came, for whom you washed yourself, painted your eyes, and adorned yourself with ornaments. And you sat on a splendid couch with a table prepared before it, on which you had my incense and my oil. And the sound of a crowd at ease was with her, and drunkards were brought from the wilderness with men of the commonest sort, and they put bracelets on their wrists and put crowns on their heads. Then I said concerning the one worn out in adulteries, now let them commit her whorings, even hers. And they went into her, as men go into a woman who is a whore. Thus they went into Oholah and Oholibah, the wicked women. But let righteous men judge them with the judgment of adulterers, and the judgment of women who shed blood, for they are adulterous, and blood is on their hands. For thus said the Master Jehovah, bring up an assembly against them, give them up to maltreatment and plunder. And the assembly shall stone them with stones, and cut them with their swords. And they shall kill their sons and their daughters, and burn their houses with fire. And I shall put an end to wickedness in the land, and all the women shall be instructed not to commit wickedness as you have done. And they shall put your wickedness on you, and you shall bear the sins of your idols, and you shall know that I am the Master, Jehovah.